Hey everyone, this is Hoarding Worm, and last month's reading recap was so well received that I figured let's do that again. So grab something to drink and let's go over my March reads. In March, I read 12 books, 10 fiction, 2 non-fiction, 2,957 pages, and I had 1 DNF. Now, this was a month very much dedicated to my arcs because I managed to get through 7 from my shortlist. Identity was the most prevalent theme, with the stories ranging from contemporary and historical fiction to very much the fictional territory involving zombies, sea creatures, and demons. March was such a good month, so let's get into the details. Kicking things off with my favorite book of last month, Women of a Promiscuous Nature by Donna Everhart. Now, this book made me angry, frustrated, stunned. It really filled me with a despair I genuinely wasn't prepared for, and a sense of injustice so deep I felt it in my bones. I'm usually a fast reader, but not with this one. The events described here demanded time to sit with, to process, to breathe through. And the fact that they were based on true events actually made every single page hit harder. Under the American Plan, or the Chamberlain-Kahn Act of 1918, women deemed promiscuous, or simply suspected of carrying sexually transmitted diseases, were declared a danger to society and subjected to forced physical examinations, detention, incarceration, and also in some cases sterilization. The definition of promiscuous was so vague, so deliberately malleable, that it was inevitably abused. Living independently, being in the wrong place at the wrong time, failing to be a good woman, that was enough to have you locked away and reformed into a good and decent citizen. The alternating POVs, 2 inmates and a superintendent, are masterfully handled in this story. And the superintendent is genuinely an exercise in sustained frustration. She was arrogant, prejudiced, and utterly convinced of her own righteousness, and chillingly skilled also at gaslighting those on the outside into believing that what was being done to these women is actually for their own good. Now, the 2 inmates shift between hope, disbelief, and a desperate, fragile drive to survive in a situation that should have never existed. It is not an easy read, but it is a necessary one, especially when the parallels with how women's rights are treated today are impossible to ignore. 5 out of 5 stars. The runner-up of this month was The Deep by River Solomon. Now, I read this story, I think for the first time in 2022, and now in 2026 I did my first reread, and somehow it hit even harder the second time. This book presents itself as a modern take on African folklore. Water creatures, mermaids if you will, descended from enslaved pregnant African women thrown overboard from slave ships. But at its core, it is about so much more than that. Collective trauma, identity, both personal and cultural, the pain of remembering, and the suffocating weight of expectation. This book is whimsical, but it also has teeth, so go in prepared for both. The story moves basically between 2 main threads: the origins of the Mer people, how they found their language, became a people, and forged identity out of unimaginable loss. But also the present, where the FMC, a historian, carries the collective weight of her people's memories. All of them. At once. And it is destroying her. Mentally, physically, entirely. Her inability to know who she is without these memories, because they don't leave any room for anything else, is rendered with a painful, suffocating clarity. You will feel anger, you will feel grief, but it is so, so worth it. 5 out of 5 stars. Cruelty Free by Caroline Glenn was my third pick for my 12 for 2026 challenge. And it was nominated by the wonderful Wordgirl. Seriously, if you don't follow her, please do so, because she has the most amazing recommendations. Cruelty Free is about a disgraced actress who returns to Hollywood to launch a cosmetics company and a carefully orchestrated revenge campaign against everyone who failed her missing daughter, while the question of what really happened to her refuses to stay buried. Now, in this book, you'll find 2000's relentless paparazzi culture, a toxic beauty industry, family tragedy that ignites a savage, unhinged thirst for revenge. Hearing that, obviously I was in. And up until the 60% mark, I was actually completely convinced that this was going to be a 5-star read. The FMC's backstory, her drive, her position in the world, I really felt for her, and I understood her need for revenge. However unhinged it may be, and I supported it wholeheartedly. But somewhere around that 60% mark, the tone of her inner voice shifted, and my sympathy along with it. She became less relatable and more mean-spirited, and I actually found myself losing my connection with her. That may have been an intentional authorial choice. I mean, wealth, success, and an unchecked vengeance gradually eroding someone's grip on reality. I can see the argument for it. But combined with a weaker second half and a wild plot twist, the whole story just lost the internal logic that made the first half so compelling. That said, if you're looking for something delightfully violent, thoroughly unhinged, and that'll have you Googling where does collagen actually come from, this is the book for you. 3.5 out of 5 stars. Now, The Fourth Wife by Linda Hamilton is about a young Mormon woman who is haunted by a malevolent presence in the house she shares with her new husband and his other wives. And she must unravel the manor's gruesome history before it repeats itself. Now, for me, this was the perfect collision of Gothic horror, historical fiction, and religious trauma, and Hamilton really pulled it off beautifully. The atmosphere is immaculate, and the way that the story handles religious indoctrination, specifically how suffocating and complicated it is to escape that mindset, is handled with real care and nuance. The horror leans unsettling rather than explicit, and what lingers are the scenes where you genuinely can't tell whether what's happening is real or whether someone's mind is basically playing tricks. And that specific uncertainty is deeply effective, worth knowing going in. While this is rooted in actual history of the Mormon Church, the author did take some liberties. And the historical fiction element is firmly in the driver's seat when it comes to genres here. As I said, the FMC basically becomes the fourth wife of a man who is at the very least a narcissist and at the worst a psychopath. And what follows is basically a masterclass in navigating impossible relationships. Her inner world is rendered so precisely that I was completely absorbed with the story, and I genuinely did not see the plot twist coming, despite the red flags that were absolutely sprinkled all over the whole story. Now, my only slight frustration here was the attitudes of the sister wives, though honestly that might just be a sign of how well written they were. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Now, my witchy little heart was absolutely singing when I got approved for the arc of The Ghost Women by Jennifer Murphy. In this story, we follow a detective drawn into a centuries-old web of power, witchcraft, and secrets that refuse to stay buried in the past. Now, I grew up watching English and Nordic crime shows with my mum, and this book gave off exactly those same vibes. And I can very easily see this being adapted because, honestly, I'd watch it immediately. I also love that while it is set in the 1970s, it actually doesn't ever feel dated, and it also maintains clear, deliberate ties to the past. That said, while I was completely swept away by the plot, I did find myself missing that deeper connection with the MCs. The kind that would have allowed the most impactful moments to land somewhere in my bones rather than just in my head. 3.5 out of 5 stars. Grief Eater by Emma Osborne is a novella that packs one hell of an emotional punch. A woman rises from a violent death as something ravenous and unstoppable, who sets out across Australia to find her family with only one question left unanswered. Is she there to forgive, or is she there to feed? Set across both past and present, it moves between the female main character's traumatic childhood and her current existence as one of the undead. The word zombie isn't exactly used, but she hunts and she eats humans, so yeah, zombie. Now, in this reality, consuming human flesh comes with an unexpected dimension. The memories and emotions of the person consumed bleed through with every bite. And so her afterlife begins to revolve around a single haunting purpose: to eat her family and to finally understand how they experienced the most traumatic moments of her childhood. Queer identity, regret, trauma, acceptance, specifically the absence of it, all are woven through this story with real care. But what I loved most was the ending. It felt real in a way that a lot of stories don't dare to be. However much we may want something, however desperate we may reach for it, we don't always get it. And this book does not flinch away from that. It is violent, and it is slightly gory because we are talking about the consumption of humans after all. So do bring a strong stomach and maybe also some tissues for the emotional parts. My only complaint here for this one is the one that I always have with novellas. It was too short and I just really wanted so much more. 4 out of 5 stars. I Am You by Victoria Redel gave me something really special. Growing up in the Netherlands means growing up with the Dutch masters. You get history lessons, you go to museums, you see paintings that you actually start to know by heart. But these stories that were told were always about men. Female painters barely got a footnote, and I Am You gives you 2 of them, and their story is devastatingly beautiful. Now, a quick note before going in: this story is not meant as a faithful historical representation, and knowing that upfront will serve you well. It is, however, a story about climbing social ranks, refusing to fit the mold of what is considered acceptable, love, albeit a very toxic form, and above all, sacrifice. Both the kind you choose and the kind that is chosen for you. Now, the class imbalance at the heart of this story makes the emotional toll of an unequal relationship painfully clear, and the internal conflict of wanting what is best for the person you love, while also desperately wanting recognition for yourself, will leave your heart quietly aching. I loved the detail also given to the painting process throughout the story. It really added a richness that grounded the story beautifully. That being said, the first half is stronger than the second. The pacing shifts, certain character choices didn't fully land for me, and one specific scene involving animal abuse felt entirely unnecessary, and I really could have done without it entirely. But still, 3.5 out of 5 stars. Her Soul for Revenge by Harley Laroux is book 2 of the Souls trilogy. Now, I read book 1 last year and I very much enjoyed it, but I deliberately paced myself before continuing. Why? Because this trilogy essentially tells the same story from a different perspective, and reading it back to back would have meant too much repetition for me. Book 2 is again a lot of fun and very, very spicy. A woman escapes a cult sacrifice, makes a deal with a demon for vengeance, and finds that surviving the monster she once fled may cost her far more than her soul. I loved seeing the story from Juniper and Zane's perspective, though Juniper's tendency to spiral did test my patience at times. Still, spicy, smutty, and very fun as well. So 3.5 out of 5 stars. It's for the vibes, guys. Come on. Sometimes that's also allowed. Now, I finished March with 2 graphic novels. And the first one was How Lucky Am I by Christian Watson, where you follow Mr. Skelly, a gentle skeleton wandering through joy, loss, and love in search of a home. And in doing so, he reminds us that this fragile present moment is all we ever truly have. This graphic novel really works for both children and adults, and it does something quietly remarkable. It reminds you, gently but firmly, of the things you already know but rarely stop to sit with. That our time here is short, and that it is absolutely okay for things not to work out the way that we wanted. Seeing these truths laid out simply on the page can feel confrontational, but in the best way possible. And I'll be honest, I got a little emotional towards the end. The illustrations are gorgeous and the color palette is stunning, and Mr. Skelly is just plain adorable. I'll definitely be picking up a physical copy once it's being published. 5 out of 5 stars. Then we have The Cutting Garden by Darcy van Poelgeest and Erin Connally, which is a tender, brutal love story about mothers and daughters and what we become in their absence. It has gorgeous watercolor illustrations, loneliness, lush southern Gothic atmosphere, and a paranormal undertone threaded through every page. I'm genuinely impressed by how the author and the artist shaped this one together. That being said, the supernatural element is subtle and nuanced, which was also my biggest issue with it, because it's almost too subtle and it leaves too much unexplained. A few more carefully placed hints would have given the story significantly more body. 3.5 out of 5 stars, and that was mostly because of the illustrations and the artwork. And that was March. Quite the productive month, I would say. I'm really excited for April. I've got some exciting arcs and already published books lined up for that month, and I genuinely cannot wait to share them with you. Happy reading, and see you in the next one.